Hello and welcome back to the Fantasy Six Pack NFL Preview Podcast Series. I am your host, Travis Pastore, joined, as always, by my resident expert, Noah Spurlock. Noah, what's going on?
I'm ready to talk about the Oakland Raiders. What's going on with you?
Yeah, me too. It should be an interesting conversation. I have not thought about the Oakland Raiders really in much capacity for the last 18 months, so it'll be cool to hear and talk about what we might be getting out of them. But before we do that, it's time for plugs. As always, on Twitter, you can find me at TheRealTravioli. Hit me up, ask us questions, all that good stuff. Noah, give them yours.
You can find me at Noah Spurlock NFL. That's Noah Spurlock NFL.
As always, like I said, reach out to us, hit us up. If you have questions, we'll be happy to ask them. No, we'll be happy to answer them. Yeah, we're not trying to ask the questions. We'll be happy to answer them. Also, go look and listen to our backlog of episodes. We're previewing all the teams for you, talking all the skill position players, quarterbacks, all the guys you have questions about or are interested in. So check them out. But on to the Oakland Raiders. Their former, savior, Derek Carr, still helming the team after a weird on-again, off-again friendship with their new coach, John Gruden. Threw for a lot of yards last year, over 4,000. Did not have a ton of touchdowns, only 19 touchdowns to 10 interceptions. He obviously has this Antonio Brown, who we'll preview a little later, which should help. But Noah, are you buying any Derek Carr stock this year, or is that Oakland team just not the best situation to buy into?
Yeah, I don't love Derek Carr this year. I think he's a better quarterback than people give him credit for, but he's not in the right system. That Oakland system is just check down after check down after check down, and I don't think he has a good relationship with Coach John Gruden. There were rumors all offseason leading up to the draft. Oh, they're going to take Kyler Murray. Oh, they're going to take Dwayne Haskins. And that does not give me much confidence in the current quarterback of
Yeah.
any team. So I'm not really touching Derek Carr in fantasy.
Yeah, I feel like there was a lot of trade rumors floating around there too. But the 4,000 yards seems pretty solid for what he is. In the current NFL landscape, maybe 4,000 yards isn't what it used to be. But only having 19 touchdowns I feel like does not indicate good things to come. I know he has added in Antonio Brown, who is an all-world receiver, but like you said, it's so many checkdowns. I'm not sure he'll make the most out of Antonio Brown. So I'm out too. Is he a backup quarterback option, or is he just a full stay away, in your opinion?
I mean, he's a full stay away, in my opinion.
All right. Well, maybe if he gets traded to a team that actually likes him, things will work out better. All right, cool. On to running backs. They've got an interesting stable of backs here. They took Josh Jacobs in the first round, so usually you take a running back that high, you want to use him. They've also still got Doug Martin, ran for 723 yards last year with 4 touchdowns, caught 18 passes for 116 yards. Jalen Richard had some moments last year, 259 yards on the ground with a touchdown. Really did his damage through the air. 68 catches for 607 yards. Unfortunately, he didn't find the end zone. And, DeAndre Washington, 115 rush yards. That's about it. But he is in the mix. So, Noah, that is a bit of a crowded backfield with a lot of question marks. Who are you going for, or do you like them at all?
I don't mind Josh Jacobs. I think, kind of like you said, if you take a running back in the first round, you plan to use them. We saw that with Saquon Barkley. We've seen that with Ezekiel Elliott in the past. We saw that with Christian McCaffrey. So I think Josh Jacobs, he was Alabama's workhorse running back, and that's always saying something because those guys are always getting carries in the league. And he's going in the late third right now for fantasy, and I think that's a good place for him. You're not really that is like you're not really spending a ton on him. That's good for the 17th running back off the board. I think that's an appropriate place for him because he does have the opportunity to blow up, but he most likely won't. And there's also a chance that he really does not see much touches, and he kind of falls into running back by committee sort of thing with Richard, DeAndre Washington, Doug Martin. But yeah, I don't mind Josh Jacobs.
A couple of guys you mentioned there, Saquon, Zeke, McCaffrey. Does Jacobs have the ceiling to, I mean, Saquon's here last year, it's Zeke's rookie year, or like the stuff fantasy dreams are made of. But does Josh Jacobs have that high of a ceiling, or is he just sort of like, all right, solid number 2 guy who you put in there, he'll give you some points, but he's never going to be the single guy that carries your team for a week?
I wouldn't say there's no chance that he ends up like Zeke or Saquon, but I think it's more realistic to kind of expect him to be a number 2 guy.
Okay, yeah, that's sort of, it's hard to reach the level Saquon, Zeke, and McCaffrey have over the last 2 years, so it is understandable, your trepidation. Is there any guy outside of Jacobs in that stable who you may take a flyer on late, hoping, or maybe not hoping, but thinking Jacobs may fall into a timeshare, and someone like Martin or Richard just might get the bulk of the carries just from being a vet?
Yeah, I wouldn't mind taking Doug Martin because he has shown in the past that he can be a strong runner, but I don't know if I would trust him enough to actually take him. I might just watch him on the waiver wire.
Okay, well, like we said, they drafted Jacobs in the first round, so it seems like they want to use him, but it's never a bad idea. Just keep an eye on some of those contingency plans. And now on to probably the most interesting part of the Oakland Raiders, that is their receiving core. Obviously, they brought in Antonio Brown from Pittsburgh, where he put up his usual gaudy numbers, 104 catches, just under 1,300 yards, and 15 touchdowns. So, yeah, he's still pretty awesome. Tyrell Williams put up 41 catches, 653 yards, 5 touchdowns. They've got some other guys like J.J. Nelson. They drafted Hunter Renfrow, Clemson hero, but I don't know how much you're going to get out of those guys. So the real conversation, I feel like, is going to surround, is Antonio Brown going to be the same Antonio Brown we've known and loved for years, or is this Oakland situation not as great as he may think?
He certainly thinks it's great, if you've seen his Twitter at all this offseason. And once again, disclaimer, I'm a Steelers fan. I don't like Antonio Brown. I think he's an idiot. But I can acknowledge the fact that when he is just playing football, he is one of the best wide receivers of all time. I think everybody can agree to that. So it's really an interesting he's a really interesting guy. I think nobody can say with 100% certainty what we're going to get out of him this year. He might just play like he did in Pittsburgh and be the league's best wide receiver, or he might just really be crazy with that bleached mustache and all that stuff, never kind of reach where he was. So he's going in the middle of the second round right now. It's so tough. I think if he kind of fell towards more of the third round, like with guys like Keenan Allen or T.Y. Hilton, I'd be more comfortable taking him there than I would in the middle of the second. And then Tyrell Williams, it's going to be tough for him because he is more of a deep threat. And as I mentioned with Derek Carr, they don't like to throw downfield a lot, but he's going in the back of the 11th. That's a good spot for him. I would be okay with taking him there just because, like, there's not much to lose when you're drafting that late.
Okay, so solid flyer, Tyrell Williams for the Raiders. So outside of your perhaps hatred of Antonio Brown, do you think it's more likely that he still is wide receiver number 1, or he falls into like the wide receiver, I don't know, 10 to 15 to 20 range? Do you really see, like, how far can you realistically see him tumble if he has a rough year in Oakland?
I would say that he's probably more of like the 10 to 15 range, in my opinion, just because Oakland's offense isn't as good as Pittsburgh's offense, but he does have the opportunity to be an elite wide receiver.
Okay. And then I guess if he does put up elite wide receiver stats, do you think he's good enough that he could pull Derek Carr into fantasy relevance, or is it just, Derek Carr is going to throw over 4,000 yards, 1,500 of them are going to be to Antonio Brown, but the other yards aren't going to be as useful?
Yeah, I think it would more likely be that even if Antonio Brown is good, Derek Carr is still not very good.
Okay, well, I mean, it happens all the time. Players put up good numbers on bad teams, and I mean, if you're drafting Antonio Brown, you're at least hoping for that. So, you had mentioned Keenan Allen before. Would you take Brown over Keenan Allen? I know that's just a 1-for-1, but do you have a preference between the two?
Taking
the bias out of being a Steelers fan.
I usually prefer safer guys to risky guys, so I'd probably take Keenan Allen, but I could really see the argument for either.
Okay, if you're jumping in, you might be braver than I. I don't think I'll be taking any stock of his, but it's hard to argue against the talent, so I would not blame you if you did. All right, final question of the team. As always, you have to have one of these players on your roster. Who is it going to be?
Well, first off, we never officially mentioned Luke Wilson at tight end.
Oh,
but
wow.
we need to, because he's not very good. Don't worry about Luke Wilson. But to answer your question, I would probably go with Josh Jacobs, just because we've seen so many good rookie running backs in the past couple of years, and I think Jacobs will follow that trend.
I'm sorry, Luke Wilson. I did not mean to forget you. You didn't have great numbers. He only had 13 catches for 87 yards. It did not stand out on my research spreadsheet. I apologize to the Wilson family. Don't hate me, but as Noah said, I don't think there's a ton there, so moving on. Josh Jacobs, rookie running backs, probably probably the safest rookie for fantasy purposes, but yeah, I'd agree. I don't think there's a ton else there, and as I've already stated, I'm not sure I'm taking any shares of Antonio Brown, so Josh Jacobs seems like the best way to go. All right, well, that is it for the Oakland Raiders. Tune in again soon. We'll have more content for you, more preview podcasts. We're going to be doing every team, so if we haven't answered your question yet, we'll be getting to it. As I said at the top of the show, reach out, hit us up. We're on Twitter. We're answering questions. We'll take suggestions for the show. You have a new segment idea? You have you just have questions you want answered or whatever. We'll be happy to incorporate it. But as always, I'm your host, Travis. He is our expert, Noah. Until next time, thanks for listening.
See ya.